Welcome back to another episode of the Underworld Patreon. I am Danny Gold. Joining me today is my friend, former Vice colleague, and just all-around badass reporter, Jake Hanrahan. We're going to talk to him about deep web Moroccan kingpins, IRA drug dealer, paramilitary stuff, weirdo internet subculture stuff, and just generally how he does reporting. It was actually a really great conversation. I had a lot of fun with Jake, and I always learn something when I talk to him. So enjoy. My guest today is Jake Hanrahan. Jake is an old friend. We've known each other forever, and he runs Popular Front and has a book out right now. Jake, can you tell us a bit about the book?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on again, mate. So the book is called Gargoyle. The subtitle is Reporting from Front Lines, Jail Cells, and Trap Houses. And basically, it's a compilation of a load of my written work over the years. I mean, some of it's dating back like 6 years now. And I wanted to put it together because, I started off as a print journalist. I think if there's anything I'm like, got any kind of skill in, I think it's writing, but a lot of people have not read my written stuff because, I'm mostly known for my documentaries and Popular Front and the podcast and whatever. So I was like, you know what, fuck it. Let me just put all of these articles that I've written over the years that nobody reads, put it together in a little kind of book form. And yeah, I guess it's, a collection of my work. And, it spans everything from like organized crime to extremist politics and war and conflict. And so far it's doing well, man.
Yeah, I think most people know you for your war coverage.
Yeah, definitely.
And the stuff that you've done all over the world. But you kind of got started doing this gritty crime stuff in England, yeah?
Yeah, I did a lot of stuff like that. I mean, I always wanted to go and do war and that, but then I got to this point where it was like, well, I've got no money. I was freelancing. Obviously, I kind of taught myself. I didn't have anyone behind me, so I had to just do all these kind of freelance bits and pieces here and there for a while. So it was like, well, I can't go anywhere really, so let me just do this, this, and this. What's interesting around me. But then, obviously, eventually, as I went and did documentaries, I would not always, but I would often write an article as well, whether we were working for Vice or wherever. So I've always, here and there, still been writing articles. But yeah, it was just, to put it all together, I realized the kind of main theme in my work like that is just kind of like the darker side of life, if you like. I mean, that's what I've always been interested in, the kind of underbelly, if you like, or like, the underworld, no pun intended. But I've really always been interested in that side of things. So yeah, I put it together with that as the kind of loose theme, and I think it works,
Yeah, talk to me about some of those earlier stories. I mean, I want to get to the stuff you did in Sweden and with the dark web, deep web drug dealers and all that. But I know you started off just kind of like, and it seemed like you were well connected sort of too in this world. You were able to move in it pretty well. So I think it was like the trap house is part of your book,
Yeah, I mean, there's the weird, one of the first things I did, I think I was like 23, was for Vice when I was freelancing before I ever even spoke to anyone at Vice UK, actually. I was writing for this guy, Jonathan Smith, one of the editors at Vice US. And he was a good guy, man. He gave me like a chance. And I had this article about this guy, Michel Van Rijn. And he was once called like the world's most successful art smuggler. And he would just be like stealing fucking artworks and importing them across the world and selling them at Sotheby's and Christie's, these like, ostensibly prim and proper auction houses, but they were very clearly corrupted. There were ways that he could hide his tracks, and a lot of people involved turned a blind eye to that because obviously they make a lot of money from it. So that really interested me. And there was a little bit done about Michel in like the late 90s or early 2000s. There was like a little BBC doc about him, which was really good actually. And then he kind of vanished, and I managed to like find him, and he's this real like eccentric, like larger than life character, like a fucking lunatic guy, very funny. And I just got talking to him, and he was like, "Who the fuck are you? Like, how did you kind of discover me?" sort of thing. And after that, he kind of was like, "You know what? You've kind of busted your balls to find me, like, fuck it, I'll do the interview." I was like, great. So, that was one of the first things I did, like, this interview with, the world's most successful art smuggler at the time. He was like, he's kind of like straight now though. Like he basically got caught and then flipped and was like, right, fuck it. You know what I mean? And he had all these contracts on his head, and which a lot of it is confirmed as well. Like it wasn't just bullshit. Although obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of bullshit mixed in. But yeah, he was interesting. So yeah, I did that kind of stuff for a bit. And then I really started doing. I mean, I was really focused on the dark web side of things quite early on. I think in 2013, I first ever saw an article about like Silk Road, and I was just obsessed. I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is so interesting. And I made it kind of my mission. I was like, I must end up. I want to see the whole production. I don't want to just write about it from my desk. And, years, probably like 3 years after I first ever heard about this shit, I ended up, I actually went to Morocco and met with like a deep web drug dealer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
that's the
definitely want to
first
talk
piece
about
in the book. Yeah.
Yeah, that piece is incredible. But what can you kind of explain to people who might not know what the deep web is, what Silk Road was, how that stuff sort of functions?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the best way to describe it, I always say it's kind of like a secret internet within the internet. So you need a special program to access it. The websites that are on the dark web, deep web, you cannot find them in Google or whatever. There's no search engine that finds them. And they will have this weird address, like, a string of numbers and letters. And then instead of .com, it's .onion, which is about the program you have to use. It's called Tor, the onion router, which basically the program you use, it acts as like a kind of VPN on steroids. It kind of bounces your IP all over the place. Ostensibly it's pretty anonymous. Like most people that are on there, that are up to no good are definitely way more protected than if they were on the standard internet or the clear web, as dark web people will call it. So in that dark web, this is where all this nefarious activity goes on. A lot of it is not. Like, a lot of it is just people that are very interested in security and personal privacy. There are a lot of countries in despotic regimes that people will use Tor just to kind of get around their firewall, if you like. But obviously within that, the more anonymous you can stay, criminals will go there and work out ways to kind of create business. And Silk Road was basically like, it was like the Amazon of drug dealing. I mean, it's kind of played out way to describe it, but it is kind of what it was. People will put up their stuff and you can buy it. So, you want heroin, you can buy it online using Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies.
It was like the first time I remember reading about Bitcoin was people buying extremely pure drugs on deep web stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and at the start, Bitcoin got like a bad rap for that, but it's like, well, at the end of the day, I mean, the Bitcoin, it's kind of like a gun. It can either be used to defend someone's house or it can be used to commit a crime. It wasn't Bitcoin's fault. It was just whoever used it. Okay, this is a more anonymous currency. We'll use it, So Bitcoin was just kind of there because it was, obviously you can't do like PayPal transactions because you'll get caught immediately. But yeah, essentially Silk Road was like the main marketplace for buying drugs on the deep web. And honestly, like, it was a very interesting culture. It wasn't just criminal. It was like there were a lot of like libertarians on it. There was a whole culture there. It was very fascinating. I would spend nights and nights just reading the message boards, and just being interested in all this world of people that wanted to buy their drugs, but they didn't want to go to drug dealers. They didn't want to risk their lives. They didn't want to get bumped off. And, on the Silk Road, if you were selling bad shit, then you would get downvoted. You would get like 1 star, right? So
I love that.
Like,
Yelp for drug dealers.
It's like,
amazing.
it's like, it stopped. It's like, okay, if this guy's selling fentanyl, well, everybody's going to be made aware of it because it will be posted about. Now, I'm not a drug user or anything like that, but certainly, the drugs are never ever going to go away. So I was like, well, you know what? Why shouldn't they have a safer place to do it? So I just became very interested in all of that. And yeah, man, I eventually contacted some people and was like, look, I'm a journalist. Here's what I do. I encrypted everything. I showed them that, look, I understand the privacy side of it. I don't want to burn anyone, but I want to fucking meet you. I want to come out and meet you. Like, I'm prepared to get on a plane and blah, blah. And yeah, eventually it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about those 2 articles. One where you went to Morocco, which is just meeting all these like big up drug dealers and seeing their whole operation, which is insane. And the Scurvy Crew too, which I think was more localized in Europe. But
yeah,
one thing I've always noticed about you, which I think is like one of the things you're best at, and one of the things that makes you an excellent reporter, is you're really good at just getting in with people. Even people. I mean, forget in person, I haven't seen it, but I assume that's true as well. But just online, like the the people you've been able to sort of win over and to meet, whether it's people in the YPG or Moroccan kingpins or extremists of all kinds. Like, you have an exceptional skill at that. And
Thanks,
I want to know, not just for the listeners, but for me, so I can get better. Like, what's your secret?
Man, I don't even know. Like, sometimes I do look back and I'm like, why the fuck did they let me tag along for that? But I think a lot of it is I'm just always really upfront with them, like I don't promise anything, I never say like, oh, this will get you good, whatever, but I'm also not pretending like I'm not aware, like if I'm meeting with a fucking deep web drug dealer and he's going to say, yeah, you can talk about my group, I'm aware that for him, that's probably good business. Now, I don't want to promote his business, but at the same time, I want to write about this because I think it's something people should know about. And it's interesting, and that's my kind of reporting, looking behind the kind of thin veneer of kind of prim and proper society. So for me, it's like, look, I get it, I'm not too chuffed about that, but we don't live in a fucking perfect world. And I'm not a journalist that thinks he's going to change the world. Like, I don't believe that. I just want people to know about things that they maybe don't know about. So I kind of always start off on that footing, like, look, here's what you're doing. Even like, there's people I've spoke to, I go like, first of all, I don't agree with you. I don't like you, but we don't have to like each other. Like I did that recent weird, like occultist 09A interview recently. And, it's one of them ones where it's like, well, if he leaked the emails I sent him, cool. I don't care. Like I said everything straight up the way I'd say it anyway. Like, I don't like you. I think what you do is disgusting. However, I'm very interested, blah, blah. And then they can either say, okay, fuck you. But then I think a lot of people that are involved in like these kind of darker side of life, they appreciate that and they might be like, all right, okay, I get it. He's not pretending he's my best friend. He's aware that like, almost everything in life is a transaction of sorts. So I think I just go in like that, man, and just be like, look, here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm not going to do for you. Here's my ethics. I'm not going to bend them for anything. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's just better to do it like that. Just being honest. And I've lost a lot of stories that I probably could have done it had I just maybe bullshitted them, But to this day, I've never burnt a fucking source, and I think that stood. I mean, anyone in the Kurdistan area will tell you, we went to fucking jail. We never ratted anybody. We never said nothing, man. I mean, we couldn't. We made it so we couldn't anyway, But like, it's one of them things. I think if you have your ethics, you have what you believe in, and you stick to it, sure, you make a lot of enemies and a lot of other journalists be like, oh, he's a fucking prick. But it's like, it doesn't matter. It's, I don't make journalism for other journalists. I just want people to know about shit. And that's kind of it,
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also, I mean, it's not just like you winning people over, like finding people in the first place, I think is, that 09A thing, these dealers, like is that just from like bouncing around the internet? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. That's a good question, man. I mean, sometimes I think it is a bit of that. Like, I basically grew up online, man. Like, I remember making my first fucking website, like using HTML and like Notepad, like when I was like 10, making this fucking Final Fantasy 7 fan website, like, so I've been online forever.
Yeah,
I feel like I kind of understand those kind of cultures, like internet cultures. But at the same time, I get obsessive with things, I can't let it go. And so then it's like, okay, well, I'm really interested in this. I'm not gonna, oh, it's 9, I better go to bed. I'm like, no, fuck this. I'm onto something. I'm just reading it. And I think that eventually you just, by way of being that way, you eventually get enough knowledge to the point where you'll talk to someone, they'll be like, oh, okay, he actually kind of knows what he's on about. But I'm also aware that like, I'll say to them like, look, I think I understand, but maybe I don't. Like, I'm aware that I'm not a fucking expert on a lot of things. It's like, I'm just a journalist trying to find out. So I would say to them, like, if you think I'm wrong, like, tell me, like, and we can work it out. And, the 09A guy, he told me a load of shit that he thought was wrong. I look back, I double checked my research, and I was like, actually, no, I'm not. You're just trying to spin a tale here. You know what I mean? So there's that fine balance where you have to trust yourself, but then also realize, like, you don't know everything. And I think it's, so long as you're doing your research properly, I think if a story's really complicated, it's okay to be like, okay, let's revisit this. Maybe I got that wrong, or maybe you know what I mean? Not so long as it's not a huge factual error. It's just like what different ways of understanding things. There's different contexts for things. Like I'm interested in all of that. I don't see anything as like particularly black and white. I think very few things in life are that simple. And I don't know. And I'm not as well. Like I'm not not too self-righteous. I hope I'm not anyway. Like if I don't like something, I'm like, oh, I think this is fucking terrible. I'm not going to be like, don't talk to him because I disagree with what he believes in. It's like, who cares? Like, yeah, okay, I disagree, but it's still an interesting story. I'm not going to, I'm not trying to, I don't want to catch anybody out all the time. It's like, no, I just want to talk and hear what they've got to say. And I don't think there's any special fucking like mixture to it. It's just being interested, really, And I don't even know if that does make me a good reporter. I hope it does, but I don't know. A lot of things I don't let go of them. There are people that I speak to, like Michelle Van Ryan, for example, the art smuggler. I mean, I did that story when I was 23. I'm 31 now, and like every time I make a new doc, I send it to Michelle because he's always said, "Hey, man, keep me updated on what you're doing." I find it interesting. I say, "Okay, fine," and I like to keep that thread, because it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's penetrating these internet subcultures too. It's similar to like doing reporting on the sort of criminal underworld, right? It's a lot of people who pride themselves on their privacy. They're probably very wary of outsiders, and you kind of have to use similar methods, I think, to win people over and win trust.
Yeah, definitely. But also, you have to. Sorry, just let me say this because I think this is kind of important. You have to. Maybe it's sneaky, I don't know, but sometimes you have to play on people's egos, like. Why would this person talk to me? Well, they've got an ego. They want people to know that they're doing this shit. They have achieved something, whether you like it or not. It's an achievement. If a dark web drug dealer is making £100,000 a month and he's getting away with it, that's an achievement in sorts. So they want people to know about it in a way. So, that's up to them. I mean, that's the downfall of a lot of criminals. As I know. I mean, like you guys say, don't Instagram your crimes. A lot of the reason people do that is just ego-driven, I think.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I mean, that kind of brings me up to that Morocco story, which is just completely nuts. I mean, you go to Morocco, meet a random guy who essentially has this like pretty legitimate setup for dealing. He's taking you around to meet farmers. You're in the mountains. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing article. Can you give us like a little summary of the article and then talk about how you were able to pull that off?
Yeah, sure. So how I pulled that off was, I mean, I can't say too much because I don't know where this guy is now. Like, I don't want to reveal any details or whatever. But basically, it was like years in the making. Like I said, I was obsessed with like Silk Road and I kept in touch with people. And then when Silk Road got taken down, I was like, right, I'm pretty sure whoever that guy was I was speaking to is not just going to give up. So then I found him and his group again on the next one and the next one. So I made sure I was still in touch. And I kept saying, like, look, man, I want to come and see this shit. Like, you really say you're about it. Let me come and see. And he was like, oh, I don't know. And then eventually he just was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, okay. So long story short, I went to Spain initially. And I met this guy. And, he's like dark web drug dealer making hundreds of thousands of pounds a week or a month. I forget. And I said, look, I want to see your operation. I get it. You're showing me enough on the website to prove that, you're selling this much, but you could just be buying from big suppliers and then distributing it yourself as a smaller supplier, which is what a lot of the deep web drug dealers were doing. They weren't getting their own product as such. You know what I'm saying? So he was like, no, I'm different. I get the product from the source. And that was his whole selling point, right? The CNA, this Corte Narque cartel, I forget what the fuck the name was. And I was like, okay, well, like, show me then, He's like, I'll show you pictures. I was like, look, man, just take me, He said, and then in the end, he said, okay, fuck it. So we got on a boat, like, we traveled to Morocco, like, and we go to the mountains. He takes me, like, some random guy. Man, it was like a film, when I was like, is this actually happening like this, And he was a guy that the things he was saying, my bullshit meter was going. I was like, nah, there's no way. And one of the few times in my life where my bullshit meter has been going, I was proved wrong. Like at every turn, he had a guy that picked him up. We got stopped by the police on the way to the mountain. He shook their hands. He gave them a hug. He gave them some money, and off we went. Like it was all there. And then we get to this like thing in the fucking mountains in Morocco. No one's around. And then we go to this grow house or this kind of safe house essentially, and it's like a massive garage or a barn or whatever, and he just opens the doors and like floor to ceiling there's literally tons of like weed stacked to the ceiling, like in hay bales. And then he pulls out this bag and there's like opium, there's shake, like everything is there the same way he said it. Then we fucking meet with the family. Basically, he's getting these like Berbers that are like native to the area. They cut it down and distribute it. Not distribute it. They kind of chop it down and make it a product for him. Then he comes, decides how much he's going to pay, gives it to them. Then he had a whole team of smugglers. They take it away and smuggle it across the border. So I was like, wow, okay, this is legit. I mean, we even stayed there. We slept in this like, they were building a hotel or something on the mountain, and it was like unfinished, like that kind of place. And we slept in this like freezing cold like hotel with no walls, like it was just so crazy, man. There was no signal there, like on the mountains you could see the fucking clouds. Like no one's catching you out there unless they've got a helicopter. So then we go, and then I said, all right, well now I want to see the actual like where's your office? So then he takes us to like this other like gated community. He has these fucking like young Spanish lads that are basically his security, like shaking his hand. You can tell like this is legit. This is not fake. He speaks about three different languages, and then we just go in this place, and he has this fucking office essentially, which is like, I think I described it as like a cyberpunk hideout. It was, if you're like David Fincher or something, like some director that knows his shit, it's like what he would make it look like. You know what I mean? But it was legit. So then he's just printing out all these orders. He's got all these crazy mechanisms set up. So, if he gets raided, he can turn everything off and delete everything immediately. It was just incredible. So yeah, man, like, I just saw the whole process. I think it's called like from the mountains to the mailbox, like literally, because I saw the whole process, it's so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of person, I don't think there can be many other people like that. Someone who's, kind of gangster enough to run the whole, like the origin point, right? To have all that stuff locked down, and also savvy enough to be selling it on the dark web. Like that is not, that sort of combination in one person strikes me as really rare.
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of the people that were selling were just like internet nerds or like criminals who've kind of got enough know-how, like read enough about it to do it.
Yeah.
But this guy, his whole operation was like, he had it all. You know what I mean? It was, when he said it was from the source, he wasn't lying, like it was from the source. And it was funny actually, years and years later, this guy completely vanished. Never heard from him again. All of the his market that he was operating on got shut down by the FBI and shit. Years later, I get this weird email from someone with like this like driver's license, and they were like, "We've caught your guy" or whatever. Like, and it was this guy Patron or whatever. And I looked at it and I was like, "That's not fucking him. Like, that's not the guy." Like, I never replied because it's like I don't know what the fuck this email was, but I was like, "Yeah." So as far as I'm aware, he's out there somewhere still.
But who said that? Like some
no
random
idea, bro. A Proton email, like throwaway email address. I was like, what the fuck? I think it was probably like a former dealer that was trying to maybe blackmail Patron or something. But whoever it was, I was like, yeah, that's not him. Like, I was like, fucking hell, this is weird. But I don't know what happened now. I'd love to know one day. I tried to find out like what I was like what is going on here, but no, I don't know. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, I don't know, maybe he's out there still, but I don't think he'll ever be in touch again. Like, I don't know. I think for him that was enough. But it was very interesting.
I mean, if he held on to some of those Bitcoins, man, he could probably do whatever the hell he wants right now.
Well, that's what I think, and he was very smart, man. I say in the article, he was less a drugs guy that came into the kind of deep web world and more of like a deep web guy that went into the drugs world. You know what I mean? He wasn't, to see him, you would never think, I know it's like stereotypical to think that a drug dealer looks like a drug dealer. But he just didn't have any air about him until I saw him in action. And then it was like, wow, okay, this is a different fucking guy. Like, it was almost like two different people. You know what I mean? So, he could turn that shit on and off. I mean, he's probably living it up somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a friend that was selling like, not even real, like Kratom online, like through Bitcoins years ago. And he went through probably like, hundreds of Bitcoins, fortunately sold them all. But sometimes I think about these kids too that I know that used to do like credit card scams and buy fake credit card numbers off the internet with Bitcoins. And I'm like, if any of these guys held on to like 5, they're, 10, they're set up right now.
That's it, man. And they had all these, what they call tumbling, right? So it's like the way to kind of, because people think, Bitcoin completely anonymous. It's like anyone that does 5 minutes reading knows that, no, it's not. Like they can very easily, anyone can track the wallet it went to, blah, blah. With Tumbling, they essentially laundered the kind of trail, if you know what I mean. It was almost like, I think I might be wrong on this. I mean, some Bitcoiners will probably scream at me, but if as far as I'm aware, Tumbling is like putting your Bitcoin into a VPN almost, like bouncing the fucking process around the place. So I know a lot of people would tumble their coins. I know Patron was very, very careful. Like he used to tumble his coins. He used Tails, which is like a remote operating system. He had all these weird fail safes in his house where like if he pressed this button, everything died and deleted immediately. So there are enough people that probably got away, but at the same time, there is so many people that didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you also did a part 2 on that, which was with the Scurvy Crew, which seemed like they were more Europe based, and it was kind of the second part of
that one. So that was
it was the first one. Yeah,
yeah. So that was the
in
first
Spain.
one, right? That was part of my getting access to Patron. Basically, that was like another part of the operation. There was a lot of, like, I met the guy, and things were very, I didn't get to see much. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
That was like almost part of it. And then nobody got in trouble for that. No one, I didn't even get a contact, like the police didn't contact me or anything. Like we have pretty good laws here in the UK for stuff like that. I mean, they're being diminished by the day due to the government we have. But back then we had like, if the police were like, where did you find that guy? It's like, bro, I'm a journalist. Like, it's none of your business. I also make it as well. I tell people, like, I say, look, you make it so that I can't, even if I was a snitch or whatever, you make it so that I can't. You know what I mean? Like, don't give me enough details. I'm always reminding people, like, be aware of your OPSEC. Like, with J Stark, this 3D printed gun guy, like, I mean, if the police raided me, it's like, good luck trying to fucking find anything. Like, because these people are smarter than me. You know what I mean? It's like, they're smarter than I am. It's like, fucking hell. I just tell them, look, don't get careless. Not because I care about them or, I want them to be okay. It's just like, look, I don't want any of my contacts to be burned because as a journalist, that's, you're meant to protect your source, whether you agree with them or not. And, I just say to them, look, you make it as good as possible on your end, and I'll do the same, and then we can talk. And sometimes even say to them, like, look, this is what I want to do safety-wise. What do you think? And honestly, most times they were like, fucking hell, that's over the top. But I'm like, look, I don't think it is. Better to be safe than sorry. You know what I mean? Or sometimes they'll say, no. Think about this. I'm like, okay, yeah, good point. Then it helps me in the future be like, right, how can I take care of myself to make sure XYZ doesn't happen.
Yeah, the 3D gun thing, for people who don't know too, that was a big thing that Jake did a couple months ago with I don't even know, one of the major gun printers in the UK, not the UK, in Europe.
In Europe, yeah. So basically, it's a documentary I made for my platform, Popular Front. We obviously, like, firearms are almost completely illegal in Europe anyway. And I met the guy that is designing, like, what is arguably the most powerful 3D printed gun right now, and, like, he designed it, he made it. And, yeah, we made a documentary where, like, he test-fired it, everything, we saw it, he made the bullets, all in a European country where he would get, like, 20 years in prison for this. And that, honestly, was, like, 3 years in the making to get access. Like, easily 3 years I was trying to get that access. And, yeah, man, we did it, and, like, it's nearly at 2 million views, man. It's fucking great. But yeah, that was the whole process, that, and like that guy's still free as far as I'm aware. Like, I don't think the police are that fucking bothered about it. You know what I mean? There's a lot more dangerous things that is on their plate in Europe right now.
Well, that whole thing, I mean, you keep saying it takes 2 or 3 years. It sounds like persistence is the key, just like following up with people, asking them again, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think as well, pacing it. Like, I try not, I think when I was younger, I was probably a bit annoying. But now I'm older, I like realize, I'm like, okay, like if this guy says no, or he's like not right now, he means not right now. Like I'll just be like, okay, no worries. I mean, J Stark, I wanted to do it about a year ago. He was like, it's not ready. I said, okay, it's not ready. That's it. You know what I mean? And then 6 months later, hey, you ready yet? No, I'm not ready yet. Okay. And then one day he's like, hey, actually, I'm ready now. It's like, okay. So, I think not bothering people. There's this thing within journalism where it's like, you have to be persistent, which you do, but you also have to, like, not be a pain in someone's ass.
Yeah, don't be a dick about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, these people have got lives as well, and they're doing something often illegal. And, okay, they might have said they'll give you access, but you just have to wait. I mean, as well as I do, like, these people have a reason for doing something, and they're not going to do it to please you. So you just have to, I think, just roll with it and do it. And I've lost access to a lot of things just because, eventually someone's gone, you know what, nah. It's like, okay, take the L, and then maybe, in a few years they might change their mind, or who knows.
Yeah, I think knowing when and how to push are two really important qualities to have in a journalist. Like, you do have to push sometimes, right? You got to be, oh, well, can you take me to that guy?
Yeah.
Well, can you show me this? Can you do? And people sometimes don't want to do it. You just have to learn how to push in a way that's persuasive, like without being a dick about it. I mean, that's really just the key.
Yeah. I learned a lot of that, like from honestly from my granddad. Like God rest his soul. Like he died last month, but he was an amazing man, and he not as a journalist. He wasn't a journalist or anything. He was like a carpenter, a draftsman, but like a joiner rather. But like I think just in life, he was always very direct with people in a way that everyone was like. Your granddad was just like the most honest guy. For better or worse, like he stood up for what he believed in always. And I think when you're like that, people just can tell. You know what I mean? If you really believe that, like, and you're forward with people, there's, if you're a sneaky fuck, people are gonna work you out. You know what I mean? And I hope I'm not.
Yeah.
I never want to be that stereotypical like sneaky reporter. Like, not that I just think that's just wrong. Like, even if I don't like the people I'm talking to, I'm not trying to fuck them over for my own self. I really don't think that's the way. I think because then you just give journalists a bad reputation. And if everybody did that, eventually no one would talk to any of us and we wouldn't know about anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned your earlier days that I think you wrote the piece about the art smuggler when you were 23.
Yeah.
One of your other earlier stories that I think I really liked, I think it was one of your first videos too, was in Ireland, I think in Derry or other places like that, where you did stuff about various Irish paramilitary groups and either them clashing with or becoming drug dealers. Can you kind of summarize that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I did a fair bit. One of the first things I ever did for Vice was a very young pup. Was I went to the Loyalist bonfire, which is like the people in Northern Ireland that identify as being English and they don't want to be a part of the Republic. That was a very weird thing for me because like I'm a British guy, born and raised in England, but my granddad who like essentially raised me, he's an Irish guy, and he's a Republican, he's a guy that grew up in the Republic, believes in Ireland, the fight that Ireland had in the Easter Rising and what have you. So I knew all that shit. So it was very weird for me to go there to be like. I remember one time I got called a tag, which is like a derogatory term for a Catholic. Because someone asked me my surname and like Hanrahan's like a very obvious Irish surname. And it was like the weirdest thing. Like this kid that is born and raised in Northern Ireland is calling me like a tag. And I'm born and raised in England, but because of my lineage and surname or whatever. And it was just the weirdest situation. I was like, just such a crazy, honestly, kind of hate-filled place. Not to really dunk on the Loyalists. Like a lot of the issues that they're having is because I mean, look, put it this way. People say that the Loyalists in Northern Ireland are like the most patriotic Brits, but Britain doesn't give a shit about them. And it's so true, it's a very unfortunate position they've kind of put themselves in. But yeah, so I guess my first time reporting, I was in the like English speaking part, if you like, of that part of Ireland. And we did a little doc there. And then I went to the Republic. I did a doc about a Republican youth group. So a group that basically called Nafina Éireann, which is kind of roughly translated as like Ireland's Young Warriors or something. And they basically were a group attached to the Continuity IRA, which are like what you call a dissident paramilitary. Now, I don't want to give my opinion on the troubles or whatever, but it's safe to say that 99.9% of people, Republican or otherwise, in Northern Ireland do not want political violence anymore. It's not perfect, but they don't want it. A lot of Americans see a bomb blast go off in Northern Ireland now and are like, "Hey, up the road." It's like, no. Normal people do not want this. They don't want to return to violence. There's no need. There's a lot of issues there, but we've come a long way past that, But there are what they call dissident groups, where they still want to do political violence because they think it's the only way forward. So essentially, I met up with like a youth group, which they're like the youth wing, essentially, of this Continuity IRA group, this dissident group. They claim not to be. Everybody knows they are. Like, it's very clear. And yeah, man, I just followed a group of like young lads that are being essentially indoctrinated into like militant, Irish republicanism. And it was quite a sad story, really. You're talking like, I think the youngest lad was like 12, and he's running around in the woods with like a pretend rifle, and they're doing like military drills just in case they have to go to war again. And I think it was more a story of like kind of sadness of like militancy, political violence, the leftovers of that in a place that can't really let go of it, but also doesn't necessarily need it anymore. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think that was really interesting. I love Ireland, like I think it's a great country. I have family there still, but that for me was a part of like, like our family would be essentially, I don't know, they call them free staters, like Michael Collins as a hero in my granddad's eyes. So I never saw that side of it. You know what I mean? That kind of determination to still want the violence. So yeah, it's all very interesting, man. And then, I've done a lot of podcast episodes recently as well about how that militarism is it's coming back now, but on the other side now, the loyalists are really agitating now. The loyalist paramilitary groups, the ones that, want to be a part of England, they've said that they no longer recognize the Good Friday Agreement, which was essentially what stopped the violence, or at least majorly stopped it in Northern Ireland, the ceasefire. So it's all very interesting still, I think people should be watching that part of the world.
What was the free dairy one? Wasn't there, or you were telling me this, maybe it was not on camera, about the interactions between some of these paramilitary groups and various drug gangs there, or how some of them have become drug dealers? Like, what's the story with that?
I didn't do free dairy. I know what you mean. That was someone else, but I know what you mean about that. Like I've talked about that before. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the paramilitary groups now that are like, oh, we're still fighting. A lot of them are drug dealers, and getting kneecapped, like having your knees shot out and getting like crippled by a paramilitary group in certain Republican areas now is very, very common. There's an excellent documentary anyone should watch. I think it's called A Mother Takes Her Son to Be Shot. So often like a paramilitary group might put a letter through the box and say, look, you either leave and never come back from this area, like literally leave your house tomorrow, or you bring your son to this park and we're going to shoot him in his leg because we know he's been dealing drugs. Now, a lot of those groups that do that, unfortunately, are also dealing drugs themselves. Notice it's never the big kingpins that get shot. It's always like a fucking 18-year-old that's selling a bit of coke on the side or whatever, So there's this weird situation where it's like, oh no, we're enforcing this. And it's like, you're kind of just enforcing your own drug dealing, So there's a lot of that. There were some groups, like there was a group years ago, I think called RAD, Republican Action Against Drugs. From what I am told, they were one of the few groups that genuinely was not dealing drugs and was like shooting drug dealers. But yeah, like a lot of that happens still very regularly in Derry, very regularly in Belfast. A friend of mine, his friend got like, his kneecaps put in. Eventually he had to leave. I think he was like 17 years old, So imagine that, like, okay, don't get me wrong. I've grown up in an area where there's a lot of drug dealing, and I have no love for them because I've seen them destroy communities, by dealing heroin and what have you. But some teenager that's fucking 17 and he gets his kneecap shot in by like a 2.2 pistol, or if it's worse, I can't remember what it's called. It's called like a full rack or something, where they do like both the knees, both the elbows, both the wrists. Like very brutal. Yeah, like a 6-pack. That's it. It's called a 6-pack. Very brutal, So that happens there a lot. And honestly, like a lot of the so-called dissident Irish Republicans are very criminalized, But it's exactly the same on the loyalist side. I mean, if not more so, all of the loyalist gangs now are like absolutely flooded. I mean, there was a very kind of notorious group called the Hallion Battalion, and I think their leader like overdosed on heroin. Like there's a lot of drug dealing going on there. It's a very sad situation. I mean, the British government has a lot to answer for. Go over there, cause this shit. Slaughtering people on Bloody Sunday. There was a Bloody Friday, but yeah, Bloody Sunday, and then now we're just like, okay, see ya. Like, good that they're gone or whatever, but they're still there. And then you have a group of like thousands of people that identify as English, and it's like there's no leadership for them really. The Republicans are thriving, so it's at a place now where there's a perfect storm again. Unfortunately, this time it's on the other side. It's looking more likely that the loyalists might do something, but we'll see. Hopefully not, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I just always find it interesting when you have these groups that either paramilitary organizations, self-defense organizations, like you see that in Mexico. You see with things like FARC, where they start off as having a cause and they just sort of morph into way more focused on the drug industry and earning money that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I should say as well though that I'm sure a lot of the money that came, so notoriously the real IRA, the RERA, some people call it, they were kind of very embedded. There was a famous or an infamous rather shooting. I think a guy Alan Ryan was like one of the head. I think the head of the real IRA in Dublin. I think you did an episode on them, right? Maybe
Yeah.
not. Yeah. So like he was like obviously quite heavily involved. But I'm sure like a lot of the money they made through that probably did go to like buying weapons and what have you. But certainly, money is a bigger driver than any revolution when there's not an open war going on. I think, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, speaking of open wars and whatnot, another story I wanted to talk to you about that you had done, I think fairly recently, was about Malmo in Sweden, because I think we really want to do an episode on that. And you hear a lot about that. You hear a lot about that in the news from sort of all sorts of sides. And I know you're good at cutting away the bullshit. So what did you find there? All we hear about there is either it's gang warfare and it's crazy, or it's fine and there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, man, that's a great point, actually. I mean, I think I did that story about 3 years ago now, and it's funny you mention it because a friend of mine who lives in Malmo recently sent me a link, literally last week, saying that like the kid that I was filming about, the guy that murdered him, was recently sent to prison, and it was mistaken identity. Like the kid was not involved in drugs; he was just accidentally shot because a guy ordered a death. But basically, yeah, it's like you said. So you get like very kind of more like radical liberal types are like, no, there's no problem in Malmo. It's just the fascists are making it out to be worse than it is, which is complete bullshit. It's absolutely insane in Malmo. Let me tell you, the level of gun violence is outrageous. And people there will, I've heard these apologists say, oh, well, what about Chicago? Like, really, you're comparing gun-mad America to a huge city, right? Like Chicago, and you're comparing that to a very small enclave of a Scandinavian country. It's incomparable. It's a stupid comparison to make. But then you have the other side, the right-wingers, who are like, oh, it's because all the immigrants live there. And it's like, no, like a lot of the people at the top of these drugs gangs are fucking old school white Scandinavian criminals, So essentially the problem in Malmo is like, what we say here is like 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. So you've got outrageous levels of gun violence there. I think I read that there's more explosions go off in Malmo than anywhere else in Europe. And this is because of criminal gangs literally throwing grenades at each other. And to give you an idea, when I went there first, I think 3 weeks before I'd been there, an IED was placed outside of a police station and like no one was caught. The murder rate is through the fucking roof. Guns are just everywhere in this tiny little enclave. It is mental. But the problem is, the police genuinely seem to have an attitude of like, well, it's all the immigrants live there, let them kill each other. And it's from the way I see it is Sweden, when we're so liberal, we'll let everybody in and then just kind of push them into a corner and we're like, let them live there and ignore them and don't help them integrate, don't help them with X, Y, Z. And then it's like, well, surprise, now there's a big crime problem. That's not about race or color or where you're from. That's just what happens. You know what I mean? And especially They have the bridge to Denmark. Loads of former like Balkan wars guns are over there. They make their way very easily across that fucking bridge. But you can look on social media. My friend sent me a video recently where members of this drugs gang are driving through Malmo with a gold-plated AK, I think it was, firing shots into the air for a laugh. Like it's insane, man. Like it's just outrageous. There's a big court case going on right now with a Kurdish rapper actually called Haval. He like kidnapped a guy, him and some other guys, like this other famous rapper. Now Haval's brother has just been shot dead. It's this horrible culture of tit for tat killings. The policing is way too lenient. And this isn't just me saying this. When I went there, Mohammed Dabaid, God rest his soul, young lad, like good student, not involved with drugs gangs. His family were immigrants from Najaf, and he got killed by accident. Like someone paid for, go and kill this guy. He looked like the guy. He was shot dead at a bus stop. He was nothing to do with drugs. Like that's been completely confirmed. And unfortunately, he's dead, right? His family was saying, like, trust me, there is not enough policing here. It's like this thing of like, I don't know. Look, I'm no fan of the fucking cops, but the idea of like, oh yeah, let's just let everybody get away with what they want. you end up with a situation like Malmo. There has to be some kind of incentive to look after your own community. The people that think that Malmo is theirs are drugs gangs. And as glamorous as people want that to be, it's not fucking glamorous when someone's kid is getting murdered by accident or a tit for tat killing. You know, there's no space for fucking Twitter discourse here for that. It is what it is. There's an insane level of guns going off. There's a ridiculous amount of weapons, and there's a very big problem. Young, innocent people are being murdered. Young people that perhaps don't even want to get involved in this are having to get involved in it. I have a friend there, I won't say his name, but a couple years ago, he was saying to me, like, bro, I can't leave the house for 2 weeks because there's a kid who looks just like me. There's a hit on his head, and everybody knows it. And he was like, I'm not fucking going out in case I get killed by accident. A few weeks later, the kid got killed. Like, not my friend, the kid who it was. So then my friend's like, oh, cool, I can go out again. Could you imagine living like that? And then some fucking guy on Twitter telling you, actually, it's a far-right myth. No, it's not. But then at the same time, you got some fucking fascist telling you, oh, no, it's just because you're a Muslim or you're brown. Or like, it's just very, very disturbing that all of this, like, political discourse has been wound into what is a very tragic and sad situation. And when you do your episode, I think, you know, I don't think I'm wrong on this. I spent a lot of time researching this and talking, you know, I was there on the ground. I actually went to crime scenes and shit, you know, and I think that's the reality, you know, it's a forgotten place, is kind of liberal and as open as Sweden wants to pretend it is. They're not ready to deal with it. And the drugs gangs, I mean, what are they going to do? They're making good money. They're enjoying this gangster lifestyle. What are they going to do? Put down their guns for what? Why would they? You know, it's just very sad. The whole thing is fucked, man.
Yeah. I mean, I've wanted to. I think Sean's talked about going there too to figure out an episode or figure something out. I'm trying to think of anything else. What else do you want to tell us about Gargoyle and what people can find there, or where they can buy it?
Yeah, man. Well, people can buy it if you go to gargoylebook.com. You'll find like links to US or the UK. It's on Amazon. I know a lot of people don't like Amazon, especially people that like my work, but it's a compilation of all my old articles that I've written for Vice, Esquire, Wired, blah, blah. The only way to kind of put it out like this was to just do it via Amazon. So, yeah, unfortunately, you know, sometimes you have to dance with the devil, but we'll you know, it is what it is. So if you want to get it, it's on Amazon. Either just search my name, Jake Hanrahan, Gargoyle, you'll find it. It's doing well. It's got good reviews. It's selling quite a lot. I'm happy with it. But yeah, man, I think it's a good introduction to the kind of work I do. You know, like I said, it's got articles about, you know, weird internet drug dealing. It's got articles about my time on various different front lines. But it's not just like, here's a war, here's this. It's like specific stories that have happened within these things, you know? Like, you know, I went to the DNR, the kind of separatist region of East Ukraine, and experienced the most strange, like North Korea-esque fucking press trip I've ever experienced. So, you know, I wrote about that. It's funny, actually, I should mention, after I came back, I did a doc on that as well. After I came back, certain people at Vice were like, you shouldn't have exposed them like that, man. We've now lost access. I remember that day just thinking like, wow, is that what you do your journalism for? Like, oh, sorry, I fucked your access, but like, you know, sorry for showing the truth. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a lot of that, you know, it's a lot of kind of, I don't know. It's like, here's how it is. Here's how I saw it. If you like it, you like it. You know, people seem to enjoy it.
And then you've got Popular Front, obviously, is going on and continuing to go on. Season 2 of Q Clearance 2. Do you know when that's coming out?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So Popular Front, I guess, I don't know what you call it now. I guess like it's a platform. You know, we do podcasts, articles, documentaries when we got the money, all sorts. But yeah, Popular Front's still going strong. You can see that popularfront.co. You'll just find everything there. And then yeah, man, the series that I did with iHeartRadio about QAnon. The second series is coming out in, what month is it? May?
Yeah.
Yeah, so June it's coming out, or July, I forget, but one of those 2 months. Basically, the second series will kind of be like, you know, oh, everyone's like, oh, it's done now because Trump is gone. It's like, no, actually, it's gone further underground. And we're kind of going to be like, here's loads of very niche parts of QAnon you didn't know about. You're not going to hear in these kind of dramatic, you know, mainstream articles. For example, there's a whole like economic system that they want to implement if they got their way. We're going to talk about that. There's the way that it's somehow made a big impact in Japan. You know, like the way they're on Telegram now, they're becoming even more insane. Like, Yeah, so we're gonna go into all of that, man. So yeah, Q Clearance, the second series will be out soon.
Sounds like fun and also highly disturbing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But it blows my hair back, that sort of stuff. You know, I don't know. I'm always interested in that side of things where it's like, you know, the kind of like, I've always said this. I said it in the intro actually to Gargoyle. There's a lot of like rules are rules type people, and I've just never been one to be like, oh yeah, rules are. Sometimes it's like, okay, but let me just see who's breaking the rules, why, like what. It's just interesting to me, you know. And I think, excuse me, I think that. Not even from like some fucking Bart Simpson rebellion level, just interesting. You know, it's just interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's the weirdos and the rule breakers are always the most fun people to report on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that does it for us. Thanks again, Jake, for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time.
All right, man. Thank you so much, Danny.